You ever get fired for being too good at your job? I have. Name's Pete Green, Senior Product Safety Engineer, or at least I was. For 6 years, I worked at Raylar Tech clean labs, polished hallways, and people who smiled just enough to look like they cared. But behind every badge swipe and team huddle, there was one rule. Don't slow the money down. And when they brought me the prototype for the Ray-Ban Pulse, I had a bad feeling. It was sleek, no doubt, a wearable fitness tracker with biometric sensors, heat mapping, heart rate, hydration. Even had a solar strip along the rim. Flashy, new, marketable, and apparently ready to launch just in time for Black Friday. Too ready. Run it through the heat chamber, I told my junior tech Nate. 2 days later, we had numbers. Ugly ones. Thermal runaway probability, 1 in 37. That means for every 37 people wearing it during a summer jog or a sauna session, one might end up with a burning wrist. I ran it again. Same result. So, I flagged it, the way I've flagged dozens of issues over the years. Wrote up the report, tagged it high priority, dropped it in our internal system. Sent it to product, legal, engineering, and of course, the big dogs. Silence. Then came the Slack pings. Rebecca, marketing. Hey Pete, heard about the red flag. Is it really that serious? Like recall level serious? Me. Yes. Worst case scenario is battery ignition. I've included videos in the appendix. No reply. The next day, I get invited to a strategic alignment meeting. That's code for shut up or get out. The VP of product, Cameron, smiles at me like I'm a toddler who touched the stove. Pete, we appreciate your diligence, but this launch is non-negotiable. Our investors are already previewing ad campaigns. You're thinking like a regulator. We need you to think like a visionary. I just stared at him. If it overheats, I said, it won't stop at a burn. It'll explode. He blinked, then smiled wider. We'll circle back on that. Thanks, Pete. A week later, I submitted another memo. Added thermal test photos. Proposed a slight redesign to improve airflow near the battery. It would have delayed launch by 3 weeks. Tops. I CC'd legal this time. Just in case. 2 days later, my badge stopped working at the parking garage. Security let me in manually. Said, HR asked to see you upstairs. My stomach sank. I walked in. White walls. A box of tissues already sitting on the desk. Strategic restructuring, they called it. Nothing personal, they said. They handed me a manila envelope with severance paperwork and a clean exit clause. Told me I'd done great work, but that my department was being streamlined. Lies. I saw the Slack thread later, forwarded anonymously. Cameron, Pete's a bottleneck. He's slowing us down. Too risk-averse. If he won't fall in line, cut him loose. That night, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine and the weight of 6 years on my chest. I drafted one final email. Nothing angry. Just honest. To my team, it's been a privilege. I know many of you care deeply about the integrity of what we build. I hope you'll keep that fire alive. To leadership, I leave you with this. 1 in 37. That's not a risk. That's a roulette wheel. And if this product overheats, it won't stop at a burn. It'll explode. Then I clicked send and shut my laptop. For a few days, I tried to forget about Raylar Tech, tried to pretend it was over. But the universe has a way of making sure people like me are heard. Eventually. Because 3 weeks later, it did explode. And it wasn't in a lab. It was in a gym. On a real person. Caught on video. After they fired me, I did what any laid-off engineer does. Polished up the resume, refreshed LinkedIn, tried to act like I wasn't bitter. But I was. I had spent 6 years building a reputation for protecting people from bad products. And now I was on the outside, watching Raylar's PR machine roll forward like nothing ever happened. Until it did. 3 weeks after my exit, I was sitting in my apartment, tweaking bullet points on a cover letter, when my phone buzzed. A text from Nate, my old junior tech. Nate, bro, check TikTok. Now. I didn't even type anything back. Just opened the app. The first video had 2.1 million views. A woman mid-workout, running on a treadmill. Suddenly she screams, grabs her wrist, and the Ray-Ban Pulse explodes. You can see the flame for half a second before it cuts out. Caption. It just blew up on me, pouting face fire, hashtag Ray-Ban burns, hashtag fitness fail. My heart sank. The comments. OMG, I just bought this. Mine got hot but didn't explode. Yet. At Railer Tech, y'all better lawyer up. I scrolled. Another video. Then another. One showed a melted armband sitting on a kitchen counter, still smoking. Another. A dad yelling at paramedics while holding his crying son. It caught fire during soccer practice. Within 48 hours, the hashtag Ray-Ban burns was trending on TikTok and Twitter. The damage wasn't isolated anymore. It was everywhere. My inbox started lighting up like a Christmas tree. Jason firmware team. Dude, you were right. Ally compliance. They're freaking out upstairs. Like full meltdown. Nate. They're trying to find your report. I think they deleted it after you left. Then came the real kicker. One of the engineers, I won't say who, sent me a screen recording. It was from an internal Slack channel. I watched it in stunned silence. Cameron VP. Does anyone have Pete Green's original memo? We're being asked for it by legal. Rebecca marketing. Didn't we archive that? Legal department. The feds are asking questions. Find the file. Now. Cameron. Where is Green? We need to talk to him. My name. In bold. Over and over. They had buried my warning. Now they were digging up the grave. Have you subscribed to our channel yet? Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. I leaned back in my chair, watching the Slack video loop on my laptop. My phone buzzed again, this time, a number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. Then it rang again. Same number. Voicemail. Then a third call, this time with a message from my old boss. Pete, we'd like to talk. Can we set up a meeting? It's urgent. I stared at the screen. 3 weeks ago, I was too cautious to keep. Now, their product was a headline hazard, and I was suddenly their missing puzzle piece. I didn't reply. Not yet. Let them sweat. Because the next move, that would be mine. When I didn't respond, Railer Tech decided not to contact me directly again. I guess they had a rethink about crawling back with their corporate tail between their legs. Not after firing me and calling me a liability. Instead, they now sent a recruiter. A firm I'd never heard of. Fancy-sounding name, lots of polished words. Hi, Mr. Green. We're reaching out on behalf of a high-profile client seeking urgent consulting expertise in the consumer tech space. Battery and thermal risk management in wearables, to be specific. I almost laughed. They were still trying to pretend it wasn't them. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the frozen frame on my laptop. A paused TikTok video of a melted Ray-Ban Pulse next to a reddened wrist. My old work, burning into strangers' skin. I cleared my throat. Sure, I said. Happy to help. Sounds like something right up my alley. The recruiter brightened. Excellent. The client is prepared to move quickly. We're told you have deep experience with early-stage thermal diagnostics. That's correct, I said, smiling into the phone. Particularly with lithium polymer instability in wearable devices under heat stress. You know, treadmills, soccer fields. There was a pause. Then, right. Exactly. They were dancing around it, but I could hear the desperation bleeding through. I made them wait a beat. Then I said, let me guess. This isn't for a product that might explode. It already has. Silence. Then softly. Yes. A few hours later, I was on a Zoom call with someone I did recognize, Colin Rourke, Railer's new VP of Product Risk. They'd apparently shoved Cameron out of the hot seat. Colin was sweating through his smile. Pete, thanks for hopping on. We know the timing's not ideal. I tilted my head. I figured I wasn't your first call. You were, he said quickly. You're the only one who flagged this early. We've lost the internal thread. We need you to help us trace the failure chain. Identify where protocol broke down. I said nothing. Just waited. Colin kept going. We'd like to retain you. Temporarily. As a crisis consultant. Compensation is competitive. Now it was my turn. I didn't blink. Didn't soften. Triple. He blinked. Excuse me? Triple my old salary, I said. Up front. No games, no promises. And no NDA until I've seen the internal reports. He started to say something, maybe to negotiate. I cut in. You need me more than I need you. And frankly, I don't trust you. You buried my reports, fired me for being too careful, and now the product is literally combusting on people's arms. Silence. You don't get to rewrite that. I let the moment hang. Then I added, but you do get to pay me. Triple. Wire transfer. Today. Or I walk. Colin nodded slowly, like a man who knew he wasn't in charge of the conversation anymore. Let me talk to finance. You do that, I said and clicked off. That night, the payment hit my account. 6 figures. Clean. No retainer. No clawbacks. No handshakes. Just pure panic money, dropped into my lap like a bribe, or maybe a confession. Along with it came a secure Dropbox folder. Internal emails. Slack threads. Engineering logs. Battery compliance test results. They'd labeled it Thermal Incident Review. But I knew what it really was. The crime scene. I spent the next 12 hours going through everything. It was worse than I thought. My original report? Buried. Time-stamped. Ignored. Worse, marketing had overridden engineering protocols. They fast-tracked production. They skipped thermal envelope testing in warm climates to save 2 weeks. Emails confirmed it. We'll circle back to desert testing post-launch. Let's not miss Q4. They knew. They knew the risks. And they launched anyway. By 9 a.m., I was back on Zoom with Colin. This time, the entire executive suite was present. PR legal. Ops. Even the CEO, a ghost-faced man named Harris Doyle I'd only met twice before, both times during all-hands meetings where he wore too much cologne and smiled like a man who'd never been told no. Now he wasn't smiling. Pete, he said. Thank you for agreeing to help us contain this. I didn't smile either. Containment starts with honesty, I said. And from what I see here, you've got a negligence bomb ticking in your inbox. They didn't like that. But no one argued. Because I had the receipts. And they had the fire. After the call, Colin messaged me directly. Colin, look, we're in a tough spot. If this spirals further, we're done. Me. It's already spiraled. You just haven't hit the ground yet. Then I asked him a question. One I knew they were too afraid to answer. What happens when the Federal Safety Board asks who deleted my warning? He didn't reply. Just sent me the next file. The draft recall notice. They were getting ready to pull the product. 1.2 million units. All of them dangerous. All of them mine, whether I liked it or not. And now, I was back in the belly of the beast. Only this time, I was holding the match. Walking back through the glass doors of Raylar Tech felt like stepping into a burning building I once tried to evacuate. The receptionist stiffened when she saw me. No smile. No greeting. Just a quick buzz to someone upstairs. As I waited in the lobby, I saw heads turning behind glass panels. A few whispered behind cupped hands. That's him. The whistle guy. Didn't they fire him? He's back? Why? No one said it out loud, but I could see it in their eyes. He was right. A junior exec I'd never met came down to escort me up. Couldn't have been older than 28, still trying to force confidence into his handshake. Mr. Green. Thanks for coming in. I nodded, silent. The elevator ride was quiet. He avoided eye contact. Everyone did. Half the staff looked away when I walked past. The other half looked at me like I was a ghost. Or worse, an omen. In the war room, a repurposed conference space now piled high with paper, laptops, and panic, they were dissecting everything. Someone had printed out my old thermal reports. Not the originals, of course. Those were gone from their system. But I had them. I'd brought them on a flash drive. Labeled, ignored evidence. The engineering lead looked up as I entered, almost sheepish. He gestured to the binders. We, pulled together what we could find. Post-mortem logs, QA transcripts, incident videos. I dropped my flash drive on the table. You're missing everything that mattered. He frowned. What do you mean? My memos. My Slack messages. My full battery risk assessment. The simulation logs showing failure probability. You won't find any of them here. He looked confused, then concerned. I turned to the room, PR, legal, engineering all present. Because they were deleted, you could feel the temperature drop. My final reports? Purged. Not archived. Not ignored. Removed. The only reason they still exist is because I backed them up. Personally. The PR director, a woman in a blazer 2 sizes too tight for how fast she was breathing, leaned forward. Pete, let's not make assumptions. We've had internal system shifts. No, I cut in. I'm not assuming. I checked the metadata. Someone with executive admin access deleted the files the same day I was fired. I let that sink in. Legal shifted uncomfortably. The company lawyer, a bald man with thick glasses and a sweat-soaked collar, scribbled something down furiously. This isn't just negligence, I said. It's suppression. You didn't just miss the warning signs. You erased them. Later, in the boardroom, I laid it all out. Slide by slide. The initial battery failure simulations. The skipped desert climate testing. The email where marketing insisted on launch despite thermal concerns. The timestamp showing my report was deleted 15 minutes after my exit interview. The silence was absolute. Even the CEO, Harris Doyle, didn't say a word. Not at first. Then finally, how many units are affected? I turned to him. All of them. How many have actually exploded? Does it matter? You sold explosives disguised as health wearables. The next slide hit even harder. There are 1.2 million units out there. Some already recalled. Most still worn. Some by children. Athletes. Pregnant women. I looked around the room. The first class action filing was yesterday. By next week, you'll have dozens. By next month, hundreds. Legal's pen slipped mid-note. PR was visibly shaking. I wasn't there to gloat. I wasn't there to save them either. I was there to make sure the truth was finally nailed to the wall. Let me be clear, I said. If even one more person gets hurt because of another internal delay or half-truth, I'll go public. Fully. Documents, timelines, emails. Everything. Harris looked at me pale. You'd destroy us. You already did, I said. I'm just making sure the ashes are honest. By the end of the meeting, they agreed to full transparency. The global recall went live the next morning, not just buried in a corner of the website, but as a full-page banner across every Railar platform. 1.2 million units. Dozens of countries. Multiple regulatory investigations pending. And I walked out the front door. No badge. No escort. No apology. Just the sound of a company swallowing the consequences I warned them about. And as I stepped onto the street, a young intern I hadn't seen before passed me in the lobby. He looked up from his phone, recognized me, and nodded. You were right. I nodded back. Didn't say a word. But inside, I was already writing the next report. Because Railar wasn't the first to ignore caution for profit. And they sure as hell wouldn't be the last. Have you subscribed to our channel yet? Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. They didn't ask me to fix the problem. They begged. The day after I dropped the truth bomb in the boardroom, they gave me full control of the crisis plan. I wrote the recall protocol from scratch, designed the customer refund pipeline, laid out the safety inspection procedure for all remaining units, even drafted the internal statement for employees. But the real fight came with the press release. We were on Zoom, CEO Harris Doyle, the PR director, a couple lawyers, and me. Everyone looked tense. We'll say the company is working closely with safety experts, the PR lead began, and we'll keep the message focused on public well-being, not blame. I waited. Let her finish her polished little damage control draft. Then I spoke. Put my name on it. Silence. What? The CEO asked, eyes narrowing. I want my name in the statement. Full credit. Pete Green, lead safety consultant. The PR director blinked. That's not standard. I leaned in. Neither is firing the one guy who could have prevented this. They shifted uncomfortably. You want your name in the release, Doyle said slowly. After everything? Yes, I replied. Because everything did happen. And if I'm going to be the one pulling your brand out of the fire, I'm not doing it in the shadows. He scoffed. Pete, no name, no deal. And good luck finding someone else who predicted this to the decimal. That shut him up. The next morning, the official recall announcement went live. Raylar Tech initiates global recall of Ray-Ban Pulse devices. Under guidance of lead safety consultant Pete Green. It was one line, but it changed everything. Within hours, my phone was buzzing hard. CNN wanted a comment. Wired asked for an interview. Then Forbes. Then Bloomberg. I didn't even post anything myself. It was already everywhere. Screenshots of the release were trending on LinkedIn. This is what integrity looks like. Fired for being cautious, now leading the cleanup. Give Pete Green a damn medal. One comment stood out though. It was a DM from a competing company, a major name in the smart tech space. Their VP of product engineering. You just showed the world what real leadership looks like. Ever considered jumping ship? Attached a job offer. More than I was making as a crisis consultant, and with equity. 2 other offers followed by evening. One was from a government safety agency. The other, a private firm that audits high-risk product designs for defense contractors. That night, I stood by my kitchen window, phone in one hand, a cup of strong coffee in the other. I looked down at the notification flood. Offers. Apologies. Congratulations. 2 months ago, they'd made me feel like a liability. Like I was too cautious. Too slow. Too careful to keep. They told me I didn't fit the speed of innovation. They didn't want careful. They wanted fast. And now their billion-dollar product was a flaming wrist grenade, and I was the only guy who knew how to put the pin back in. Have you subscribed to our channel yet? Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Raylar's CEO tried calling me that night. I let it go to voicemail. Then I played it on speaker. Pete, listen. I just want to say thank you. What you've done in a few days, no one else could have managed. And, when this blows over, I'd love to talk about a more permanent position. I almost laughed. They wanted me back, again. But not just as a consultant this time. As a symbol. The guy who got it right. The face they buried, now resurrected. Too late. The leverage I had wasn't just in data anymore. It was in public perception. It was in every headline, every share that said, "Look what happens when you ignore the cautious guy." The next morning, I walked into their office one last time. They thought it was to renegotiate, but I had my resignation letter printed and ready. I got what I came for, I told them. You get to rebuild your company. I'm going to help build one that listens. I left the letter on the same desk where they once slid my severance package across the table. And when I walked out those doors again, I didn't feel small anymore. I felt precise, measured, and finally respected. 3 weeks after I walked away from Raylar Tech for the second and final time, I was standing under the blinding lights of a hotel ballroom in San Diego. I wasn't there as an employee. I was the keynote speaker. Global Product Safety Summit 2025. Funny how quickly things turn. From being called a bottleneck by my VP, to a standing ovation from the world's leading engineers, regulators, and CEOs. My speech was called The Cost of Ignoring Caution. I didn't name Raylar directly. I didn't have to. Everyone knew. I walked the room through the basic timeline. A safety report. Ignored. A layoff. Then, injuries. Fires. Recalls. Stock plunge. And the one quote I ended with, "They called me too careful." The truth is, I was just first. After the talk, a crowd gathered. People I'd never met, shaking my hand, thanking me. One woman, a junior product tester from a startup, looked almost emotional. "They ignore us too," she said quietly. "Your story, it gave me courage to speak up." That hit harder than anything else. Because this whole mess, it was never just about me. It was about a culture. A system that punishes people for raising red flags and rewards speed over safety. But that culture was cracking now. And I had the match. Back at home, things shifted fast. That competitor who offered me a role? I said yes, but with one condition of my own. I wanted to build a new division from the ground up, an elite internal safety unit. Autonomous, unfiltered, unfireable. I pitched it as a shield between innovation and liability, and they bought it. The name? Project Ember, because even a single ember left unchecked can burn a forest down. The irony? Raylar Tech tried to sue me, said I'd damaged the company's public standing. But their own internal documents, the ones I'd backed up, proved I'd flagged everything in writing. Dated, time-stamped, forwarded to execs. Their legal team crumbled like a stale cookie. And the press? They weren't interested in their side of the story anymore. They wanted mine. So I told it. One interview turned into 5, then 10. Suddenly I was on 60 Minutes, talking about the culture of corporate silence. I wasn't just a safety engineer anymore. I was a warning signal in human form. Raylar's CEO resigned. They tried to spin it as retirement, but the leaked board memo said otherwise. 2 class action lawsuits followed. One for negligence, one for wrongful termination. Mine. Yeah, I filed that one. And when we settled, let's just say the check they cut had 7 digits before the decimal. I didn't even cash it for a week. I just let it sit there on my account. A reminder. They paid for ignoring my desk. But I'd already spoken. Now I fly more than I sleep. Speaking gigs, consults, government panels. But every time I walk into a new company, I ask one question first. What happens when your engineers say, "This isn't safe"? If the answer starts with, "Well, marketing says," I walk, because I've already seen how that story ends. And it smells like smoke. They fired me for being too careful. Then they called me when it exploded. Now they quote me. My words, the same ones they laughed at in boardrooms, are printed on slides at safety workshops. If it overheats, it won't stop at a burn. It'll explode. That sentence used to get me ignored. Now it gets me hired. A few days ago, I got an anonymous email. No name. Just, "I was in the room when they fired you. I didn't speak up. I should have. I'm sorry. I don't need an apology. Not anymore. What I needed was respect. A seat at the table. Now I own the table. Because I didn't fold. Didn't disappear. I let the work speak. And when it all went up in flames, I came back holding the extinguisher and a bill. Triple pay. No NDA. Name on the press release. Vindicated. Here are some questions for you, our viewers. Have you ever been punished or ignored for speaking up about a problem? Do you think most companies value safety or speed and profits? What would you have done if you were Pete Green? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell because we have more stories coming up just for you.